Good morning, I hope you're having an absolutely fantastic day. It's that time of the month where I do a music review, and I thought that this week I would talk a little bit about the Midnight's latest release, Nocturnal. Now, for those of you who don't know who the Midnight are, they are a retro synthwave duo formed of Tyler Lyle and Tim McEwen, and they are fucking awesome. Synthwave and retro synthwave are genres of music that I have been massively enjoying recently, and I'd say that the Midnight, along with artists like FM84, Timecop 1983, are kind of the top players in that genre. So if you haven't heard any before, I would highly recommend that you check out those artists and just bask in the 80s FM synth driven nostalgia. Nocturnal came out about a month ago, and the previous releases from the Midnight were Endless Summer, which was their first kind of full-length album, and before that there was another EP called Days of Thunder. Endless Summer was the record that introduced me to them. I absolutely fucking love it, and I was so excited when they announced that they were going to be releasing this EP. It was a couple of weeks after it came out that I listened to it for the first time. For those of you who follow me on Instagram, you'll know that I was on holiday like last week in my parents' country cottage thing, and before getting there I downloaded it on iTunes, and then there was one evening where I sat down, put my headphones on, and I was just like, I'm going to listen to this and it's going to be wicked. Controversially, I was disappointed with my first listen. I just want to say that now. My first listen, I felt disappointed, but the problem was that I was expecting something that I wasn't going to get. And I think it's very important to point out that if you want to have the same kind of anthemic summer nostalgia that you got from Endless Summer that was packed full of just like absolute bangers, then you're not going to get it. This is a very sort of different record, and I think that is wholeheartedly a good thing. I've listened to it several more times since then, and it's definitely one of those records that the more you listen to it, the more you notice, the more you appreciate, and the more you enjoy it in general. All of the tracks are very long form, and immediately it's got a much darker tone than their previous record. If their last record was Sunsets, this is definitely Nighttime. So track 1 is called Shadows, and like I said, you can immediately, within about 30 seconds, get a sense of the overall kind of tone of the record. It sounds a lot darker. And then obviously at the different points when you first hear Tyler's vocals, and then later on when the unbelievably sexy saxophone comes in, you just have that great sense of familiarity, and you're like, yeah, this is the Midnight, and this is wicked. Now track number 2 was a song that I was initially fairly disappointed with, but is now definitely one of my favorites on the whole record, and it's called Crystalline. So this is probably my biggest complaint on the whole record in general, and it's got nothing to do with the music. You know, this isn't anyone's fault. This is just the fault of regional pronunciations, I suppose. But I'm from England, and that says crystalline, not crystalline, and every single time, especially for the first few times I listened to it, every time I would listen to that one word would annoy me so much. And like I said, it's no one's fault. I'm not saying that the Americans necessarily have the wrong pronunciation, although you do call aluminium aluminum, which is just a bit weird, isn't it? Anyway, it took a while for me to get over that, but it is an absolutely fantastic song, especially the first big epic drop when the saxophone comes in after those massively thick tom hits. You've got to be patient for that though. It's like 2.5 minutes into the song that happens. Also, when they pretend to finish the track and there's like 8 beats of silence and then it just comes straight back in again, it's so wicked. The first time I kind of clocked that happening properly, it blew my mind. It was awesome. And the use of synths in this was really imaginative. There were one or two that I heard that were definitely like classic sort of 80s sort of sounding things, but nothing that I'd actually heard before in a Midnight track or in any of these other synthwave artists. Track number 3 is called Collateral, and like pretty much all of the songs on this record, it's very slow burning. It's entirely instrumental as well, and it kind of follows this repeated melody that is played on a variety of different synths and instruments, and you actually get a bit of electric guitar in there that has similar feeling to Sunset from Endless Summer. And at like the 1 minute 51 second mark, there's this filtering that goes on that leads into the saxophone coming in, and it's just so nicely done. And the gunshot, the placement is just brilliant. Like the production in general is fantastic. I do find it a little bit repetitive, but again, you've just got to be in the right mindset to kind of allow the development to kind of go on and kind of shape everything. But also there's like 40 seconds of just rainfall at the end, which I thought was slightly unnecessary, but it's all about the atmosphere, I suppose. Right, track number 4, River of Darkness, featuring Timecop 1983. This is my favourite track on this record, like for sure. Is absolutely awesome. Although the first time I heard it, I did find that monologue at the beginning a little bit like cringy, I guess. Like, not massively, it was just the last lines when it's like, alone in a river of darkness. I thought that was a bit like, oh, come on, mate. But you've got to get into the atmosphere of it, I suppose. It's like, the, 80s heartbreak. It kind of reminded me a little bit of the scene in Say Anything when Lloyd Dobler is like in the phone booth and it's like pouring with rain and he's like,
gave me my heart and she gave me pain.
No, it's fine. Like, I don't find it cringy now. I kind of enjoy it in the context of everything. But seriously, the beat, the vocal melody, when the vocals come in for the first time, it just all works and fits together so well. And it's quite good that this comes at that point in the record, because at that point you've got used to the kind of overall form and feel of everything. and then you have this track, and it kind of is just like, I don't know, I think it's the best track on there. And it's really satisfying when the saxophone part duplicates the sort of FM bell sounds that has played before. I love it. Track number 5 is a title track from the EP. It's called Nocturnal, and is definitely, I'd say it's like the most cinematic of all of the tracks. Similarly to some of the other tracks, it begins with multiple ambiences, textures, and sort of intertwining melodies that are built up until like the main beat actually comes in. And it's a very driven beat. You know, I've listened to the song quite a few times now, and while I do enjoy it, I find it to be, I don't know, I don't get into it that much, but I know that if I was going on a run, for example, or if I was like driving around, then it would be absolutely wicked. It's just, if you're kind of sat down listening to it, it's got this, like I said, this really driven beat, and this like, it's really like powerful, but if you're not doing anything when you're listening to it, it kind of just doesn't necessarily go anywhere. It feels a little bit underdeveloped in a sense, but I know it's not underdeveloped, but it's the longest track on there. It's instrumental, it's really good, and I'm sure if I did any exercise, it would be like my number one exercise track. The way that the filters on like the synth pads open up gradually throughout the track does work incredibly well, and like I said, like, it's really good. It's just not the most like immediately captivating of songs, but it's one of the ones that if you listen to it more, you'll notice so much more going on. So yeah, it's good. Track number 6 is called Light Years, featuring the amazing singer Nikki Flores. I'm never sure how to pronounce that. I'm just going to go with Flores. So again, upon first listen, this one I found kind of disappointing, and I would say that it's the one track on the record that I'm still most unhappy with. Not that I'm unhappy with any of it, it's just all of the others that I was initially disappointed with, I'm now like, I was just completely wrong, they're brilliant. Whereas that's the one song that I'm kind of like, I skip it sometimes. Feel really guilty admitting that. The other song that The Midnight did with Nikki was called Jason from Endless Summer, and that was the song that made me just like fall in love with retro synthwave in general. But I felt like this track just didn't live up to that as much as I was hoping to, you know. The vocal melodies were fine, but they weren't as captivating as I've heard them before. Lyrically, it's really good. I liked the reference in Nikki's part to the kind of speech that happens in River of Darkness. That was quite cool, but I don't know, I kept wanting it to do more and be more, and it kind of never quite was. And like I said, I do enjoy that song. Yeah, it's weird, I don't know. I mean, that's the song that I was looking forward to the most, and it's probably the song that I listened to the least. The final track on the EP is called Tokyo Night Train, and this is another one of the songs that when I first listened to it, I was a bit disappointed, but the more I listen to it, the more I love it, and that's actually probably like my second favourite track on there after River of Darkness. I don't know if anyone else felt this when they listened to it, but I kept just expecting a beat to come in somewhere. Like, I was just waiting for it to build and build, and then something would happen, and it never did. And that's like, I think that's probably intentional, and it's clever, and it's a really, really good way to close off the EP, and yeah, I love it. It's almost like a sort of traditional minimalist composition in that it takes repeated layers and patterns and builds on them and builds on them and builds on them until they kind of get to a certain climax, and then they gradually start coming down again. If you let it, Tokyo Night Train will put you in a trance. It's like absolutely beautiful. So there we go. Now, I feel that this EP is proof that the Midnight are capable of creating an amazingly diverse collection of songs, you know, bodies of work, while still kind of remaining true to the retro synthwave genre. Days of Thunder, Endless Summer, and now Nocturnal are all such solid contributions to the genre, and yet they all have their own individual flavour and atmosphere and contribute something completely different. It's really refreshing, and it's great to see such a fantastic duo developing in a mature way. Obviously, the production and the mixing on this EP is going to be absolutely fantastic. It's just a really, really solid EP. I actually tweeted at the Midnight the other day, and they retweeted me, which was kind of cool, but I described the EP as being dreamy late night neon heartbreak, and yeah, it's kind of like that, or at least that's what it is to me. So if you want to listen to music that sounds like that, check out the Midnight. Just check out, there's a YouTube channel called New Retro Wave, which is like where I source a lot of my like new artists in that genre from. So yeah, just check out all of that stuff. Anyway, let me know what you think. Have you listened to the EP? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? And if you haven't heard any retro synthwave and you go and listen to this or any of the other stuff, like, I'd love to hear what your first impressions of the genre are. And as always, please give me suggestions of new music and new artists to listen to and review. Just do all of that down in the comment section there. Thank you so much for watching. I really do hope that you've enjoyed this. Have an absolutely fantastic day, and I will see you very soon.